Welcome to Control Your Career, a podcast to help you conquer uncertainty, shatter imposter syndrome, and rise above the expectations imposed by others. My name is Julia Toothacre, and I am the career coach and strategist at Ride the Tide Collective, my career development company, where I offer career coaching courses and I have a plethora of free content. I have been doing this work for well over a decade. And I want to help empower professionals like you find clarity, navigate your career with intention, and help you advance in your career in alignment with your unique personality, preferences, and values. This podcast is a great place to start your journey toward controlling your career. I'm bringing back the ever popular Recruiter's Perspective theme for season 11 with a new group of recruiters and talent acquisition professionals to help you understand the hiring process from their lens. We'll be digging into resume and interview tips, talking about how the ATS works, looking at the history of the job market, and we'll be tackling hot button topics in recruiting and hiring. This is going to be a season full of great advice, tips, and uncovering the truth about the hiring process from those who are on the front lines of hiring. Find this episode and more at ridethetidecollective.com and connect with me on LinkedIn, where I post career information and inspiration to help you control your career. Welcome, everyone. We are back for another episode, and you will notice I do not have a guest. Well, I guess if you're listening, you wouldn't really know, but this is going to be a solo episode where I do some recap of the last few episodes because there are some things that I really wanted to touch on that some of the recruiters said, but also I want to share some of what is coming up as well. So stay tuned for that. I will share at the end some of what we've got coming up for the rest of the season because I am very excited for these conversations. So today, this episode really is a recap and then digging a little bit deeper into some topics that were talked about that maybe we didn't really have time to go that next level with. And then also just really answering some questions that I have seen on different platforms when I've posted content about the podcast. And I'm thinking that some people probably had some similar questions. And so I wanted to make sure to address that. And for those of you watching, I have notes because these first three episodes were so packed with information that I want to make sure that I am sharing everything as authentically as possible. So let's jump into this. Okay. So, first of all, I want to talk about this idea of debunking the hiring process. And I had this conversation pretty in depth with Oscar and Silvana from the first two episodes. And what I loved about them, they are frontline recruiters. And so they are really the ones that are receiving your resumes, doing a lot of the communication back and forth. And I want to really reiterate some of what they shared because we got some pushback on it. So, first, the ATS is not rejecting you, it's a filing cabinet, not a robot. And this came from Oscar in the first episode. And honestly, this has been a consistent narrative that I have heard from recruiters. It's a filing cabinet. Silvana said something similar in her episode as well. So this is not a situation where ATS is going this one, this one, this one. Now, to get a little bit deeper with it, what we did talk about was there are questions that are called qualifying questions, and those questions might be the things that are getting you auto rejected. And so essentially, they're putting in some qualifying questions to go, does this person match XYZ? So sometimes they are looking for a certain type of degree. There are certain fields where you need a specific degree, or they would prefer a specific degree or some type of certification or a certain number of years of experience. So if you are answering those questions truthfully and you don't fit what they're looking for, then you might see an auto rejection. However, it doesn't always mean that somebody isn't also looking at your resume. So you have to think about that as well. But what you really need to focus on, I think this goes more into what are you applying for? And we talked about this as well over both of those episodes and even a little bit in my episode with Lara. You have to be applying for the right positions. And I think what's happening right now, and I know I'm a little bit of a broken record with this, is people are getting desperate. They've been laid off, they've been without a job for months, in some cases over a year, and you're just applying to everything, right? The problem with that, I can guarantee you're not qualified for everything. I can guarantee that the positions that you're applying for are not matching the experience that you have. And so what's happening is you are getting more and more rejection, right? And Sylvana and I talked about this a lot in terms of making sure that you are applying for the right position. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you're going to be the best fit in a competitive job market. And so why put yourself forward if you don't have a connection to the company, you don't have somebody that can help you get through that process, right? You don't have somebody that's referring you in, and you don't have that one for one experience. So if a recruiter is having to make a lot of leaps to see the experience, this is not the, this is not the job market to do that. There are other times when we're in an employee job market, when we're in a job seeker job market, when you can make some of those shifts when you don't have the exact experience. This ain't it right now. So really think about that as you are applying, and make sure that your experience, your titles, the content of your resume is really aligning with that job description. That is what they are looking for. Okay. All right, let's talk resume and interview tips. So I ask every recruiter what their resume tips are and what their interview tips are. Sometimes they're very similar, which I actually think is a good thing because it tells you this is the thing that they are looking for. But sometimes they are a little bit different. One thing that Sylvana shared that I thought was really good, because I see this all the time and I really don't like it. She said if you have a summary section at the top, which I'll be honest, I don't always recommend for my clients. It kind of depends on the situation. But if you have it, it needs to be in a bullet point format, not a paragraph. It's very hard to read a paragraph. Okay. And so I loved that she shared that. It just makes it easier for somebody to skim through and read. Also, I would add for that summary section, make sure that you are highlighting the best of the best. Okay, this isn't a place to highlight vague skills. This is a place to really show the change and the impact that you have made in positions that you have held. This is a common one, and Oscar and Lara shared this. Highlight outcomes, not tasks. This is one I hear all the time from recruiters, and yet people still are not doing that on their resume. I will say I do have a freebie that shows you how to write. I call it an accomplishment statement, but it shows you how to write a bullet point, shows you how to focus on those outcomes and not the task. So I'll make sure to link that in the blog post for this episode so that you can go and download it. And then I thought this was really important from Oscar. He talked about limiting your resume to relevant years. So I think this is really important, especially for people who have been around for a while. You're a little bit later in your career. We don't need a full history of the last 20 years of your career. Really, the last 10, maybe 15 if it's relevant. But really make sure that your resume is telling a story, but it's highlighting the best of the best and the most relevant to what you want to be doing next. One of the things that I loved, and this was predominantly on Lara's episode, we talked about behavioral interviewing. And this is something I know there's some controversy around it, but honestly, it's the most common method of interviewing and it's not going anywhere. And so she really went through behavioral interviewing and what she's looking for and how to be prepared. So that's something that if you're really interested in that, I would actually go back and listen to her full interview. I also actually have a couple of podcast episodes, and again, I'll link these in the blog post, that go a little bit more in depth with interviewing, and specifically behavioral interviewing and the STAR method, which is what we talked about. I know there are a lot of different kinds of methods. It doesn't matter which one you use, but it just helps you stay organized when you're talking. So I loved that she shared that. Similarly, Sylvana really went in depth with the tell me about yourself. And I know that that is a question that most people hate answering. And so if that's something that you want a little bit more context with, absolutely check out her episode, episode 2 of this season. She talks about the present, past, future structure. I also have some episodes on that go a little bit deeper and also talk about different formats you can use for tell me about yourself. And so I'll make sure to again share those in the blog post. But I love that they brought this up because I think sometimes these are mechanics that you're not thinking about, right? You don't think about this all the time. How do I answer the tell me about yourself in an interview? That's not something that's going through your brain consistently. And so it's really great that they took time to explain some of these common questions that you might get in the interview process. Outside of that, I want to make sure that we talk about the interview process a little bit more in depth. First of all, if you are getting interviews right now, you're doing great. What that tells me is that your resume is reading well for the positions that you are getting interviews for. So, for example, I had a client last year who was trying to make a transition and was not getting interviews in the area that she wanted to transition to because she really didn't have enough direct experience in that field. She reverted her resume back to the field that she's been in and really kind of leaned into that, applied for positions in that area, and was getting interviews almost immediately. Now, is that where she wants to be? No, but we talked about that transition. This is a transition. And so using this next opportunity to help gain some of the skills, possibly move internally to get her to where she wants to be. So, what does that mean? If you are not getting interviews, honestly, some of it's the market. I'm going to be real about that. A lot of positions are really competitive. However, it could also be you're not applying for the right positions. So you want to make sure that you are really applying for something that matches your skill set. This is just the nature of where we're at right now in 2025. If you are getting interviews, it means that something is reading well. So all my clients that are like, I got an interview, got an interview. I'm like, oh my gosh, we are celebrating the interview. We are highly celebrating the interview. Now, if you don't make it to the final round or you don't get the offer, now we're having a different conversation in terms of could something have gone better in the interview, or maybe they were measuring you against somebody else within the company, which I hate. I hate. If you're a hiring manager and you do that, please don't do it. I think that is the worst practice in the world. If you have an internal candidate, just hire them. Like, just promote them. Why are we comparing to people outside the company? All that does is give false hope, and that's not fair. So if you have somebody internally going for a position, just promote them. Just do it. But if that's the case, we do want to talk about what happened in the interview. Could you have answered something differently? Was there a point where it actually broke down? Because a lot of times you did fine in the interview. There isn't anything that happened. It just might be that somebody else had just that more experience than you did. When you get to the interview, you're qualified for the position. That's what you have to remember. So it's like, yes, you need to talk about yourself. Yes, you need to have a conversation, and this is a getting to know you, but you are already qualified based on the content of your resume. And so now they're trying to gauge between you and other people who's going to be the best fit and maybe who has just that little extra that they're looking for that's going to align for this position. Okay. Julia here. Are you feeling stuck in your career, unsure of how to break through to the next level? I'm excited to share a transformative opportunity. The Career Advancement Intensive. It's a focused 1-day experience designed specifically for ambitious professionals ready to define their career path. In this immersive session, you'll work one on one with me to help you gain fresh insights into your professional strengths and uncover opportunities for growth. Together, you'll clarify your goals, refine your personal brand, and develop a strategic roadmap tailored to your unique aspirations. Imagine leaving the day with renewed confidence, a clear vision of your next steps, and practical actions you can implement immediately. As a bonus, you'll receive additional resources, tools to enhance your resume, optimize your online presence, and deepen your understanding of what drives you professionally. Not all coaching requires a 6-month commitment. The Career Advancement Intensive is perfect for ambitious professionals who want answers and strategies quickly. Before committing, let's make sure that this program is the best option for you in my complimentary career coaching clarity call. The link will be in the show notes and description for this episode. Now, let's get back to the show. All right. The last little section I want to talk about in terms of wrapping up these first 3 episodes is this RTO, remote work, hybrid work, all that conversation. I know this is such a huge thing because so many companies are bringing people back. They are doing an RTO and it's really upsetting some people. Um, and honestly, we talked about this predominantly in Lara's episode, and she gave some really wonderful insight into what her company has been doing. And I think that her company, based on what she told me, is really trying to approach this in the best way possible. And so, one of the things that you want to think about when it comes to return to office, when it comes to hybrid work, when it comes to remote work, is when you are applying for the position, make sure that you are getting clarity on that. Obviously, if it's an in office position, you're going to be in office, but talk about flexibility. Ask about that. Ask, are there options for me to work from home if I need to or I want to? I know when I was working full time, and this was before all the, you know, remote work options became a thing, they wouldn't let me work from home, and the problem with that was I got more work done at home than I got in the office, and so about once a month, I always wanted to take a day to just power through things. And so the result of that ended up, because they wouldn't let me do it, I shut my door, blocked my calendar, and essentially did my remote work from my office, but I wouldn't see anybody. And the problem with that is, well, now it looks like I'm not open and I'm not, accepting of people. And I worked with students. And so it was like, why isn't she, talking to anybody? And it looked very shut off, but I had to focus. And I think that's part of the issue when we're talking about what works for everybody, and some people love to be in the office. I have a lot of friends and colleagues who love going into an office, and I love that for them. I don't. That's not how I work best. And I have a lot of clients. It's kind of 50-50 with my clients, but some want to be in the office, some want to work remote, some just want that flexibility. And I think that's the piece that we need to be getting to. So if you are applying for a position that says hybrid, remote, or something like that, honestly, every position at this point, you need to be asking about flexibility. You need to be asking about what the RTO expectations are. If it is a hybrid position, what are they going to do like in the future? Do they know if they're going to make everybody come back full time? So just asking those questions and making sure that you're getting the answers that you want. Um, the other thing I want to touch on from Lara's episode was notice periods. And so a notice period is essentially the notice that you give when you are transitioning to another position. So you're essentially quitting your position, going somewhere else. Um, in Europe, those are very different. This was actually new to me. Most of my clients are working in the US, and if they are in Europe, they know all those things. So it's not something I really deal with. But this was something that I think is really good for people to know who might want to move to another country. they have different hiring expectations, their contracts look different, so you want to make sure that you understand that moving forward. Now, going into the next episodes, and the rest of the season, one of the things that I did in response to this, because I wanted to understand global hiring and recruiting and hiring outside of the US specifically, I am going to have on a recruiter who has recruited in multiple countries within Europe. So this was something that I really wanted this perspective. Um, Not only for people internationally, I do have some international clients, but also just for people in the US to understand what is different so that if you want to make that move or you're considering that move, you have a little bit more context for what other countries expectations might be when it comes to the hiring process and what is different about their hiring process. Okay. Along with that, we have some very exciting episodes. One is going to be touching on DEI and some of the initiatives that, not initiatives, I'm sorry, the executive order that came out earlier this year. Um, that's a conversation I'm having with a really good friend of mine, and we are going to go deep and we are going to unpack it. So, if that is something that you are interested in, definitely make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, subscribe on YouTube so that you can see when that episode comes out. I have a couple more episodes scheduled. One, we are going to be talking about time away from work and being a parent, being a mom, and kind of that transition back into work and some of the challenges and struggles with that. I'm very excited about that conversation because I think it's one that not a lot of people are willing to have, and my guest is willing to have it. And so I'm so excited that we have that. I'm also going to be talking about skills based hiring. This is something that I think is becoming a lot more common. And so we'll kind of dig into that and have some conversations around what that looks like and how you can prepare when you have different interviews and hiring processes that are really skills based. And then we've got a couple other episodes, and honestly, I'm going to keep them under wraps for right now. They'll be coming out soon. So definitely stay connected. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. I'm so excited for this season. We've already had such amazing content, and I'm excited for the recruiters and human resources people I've been able to have on. They have been so gracious with their time and so open to having tough conversations. And I think that's what's really important here is being able to say, you know what? Yeah, this is a broken process. Being able to say, this isn't ideal and not everybody is in this situation and XYZ. So, one of the things that I want to leave you with on this really quick episode is to remember that not all recruiters are the same. So, the recruiters that I am bringing on, these are people that either I know or I have been connected to for a while or have had some type of connection to, and they are people that I have spoken to before before I record their episode to make sure that they are the type of recruiter that I want. I wanted to show the positive side of recruiting. I wanted to show there are recruiters out there who are doing the right things. They're in it. They are advocating for people. They are pushing back against some of the hiring decisions that hiring managers are making and some of the things that they want that really just don't align with what is going on. And I think that's really important. But it's also important to note they're not all created equal. So even though I'm trying to bring on really top notch recruiters, there are recruiters out there that they don't care. Right? Like they are hunters. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find people. They're going to ghost you. They're not going to connect with you. They're not going to respond to you. Some of them have such high volume that they can't. Right? And so even though we are giving you tips, this is not necessarily going to be the norm for every position, every recruiter in every situation. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that for every good recruiter, there's going to be a bad recruiter. And that's true of any profession. I know in career coaching, for every good career coach you have, There's probably more like 2 or 3 bad ones, but this is why I want to do this season. I want to make sure that you have access and connection to quality recruiters who are sharing information that is really helpful. All right, that's all I have for this episode. Again, make sure that you subscribe. I will have all the links that I talked about in the blog post, and I look forward to sharing the rest of this season with you.